So I have a little information explosion for those who are going to Houston or those who are going to just be playing in some tournaments in the near future. I'm just quickly gonna go through all of the relevant matchups for Darius, what to look out for, some tips and tricks, and then side decking. This is gonna be a very raw video without editing and etc. etc. Let's start with Annie. This is actually a very favorable matchup for you. You just gotta remember that fight or flight exists, Darius exists, ride the wind exists, and Vi exists. First of all, always assume that the enemy has the fight or flight, and Annie also has only one hidden card, so if Annie hides a card, you know it's the fight or flight. Then always in the back of your mind, remember that they are running the Darius, so don't give too much value to the Annie and her Darius. And then with the ride the wind, you want to make sure that the Annie doesn't get 3 points on your turn. So for example, if the Annie is holding a battlefield and you just attack into her, leaving the other battlefield empty, the Annie will just ride the wind, that unit, to the other battlefield, thus saving her unit while also conquering a point on your turn. And most likely she's also gonna get the holding point when you pass finally. So make sure she can't get ride the wind points on your turn by occupying the empty battlefield first, then attacking into the battlefield that the Annie is holding. This way the Annie can't use ride the wind on your turn because you have units on the other battlefield already, and the Annie just won't get the free point here. You can also just bait out the ride the wind by attacking straight into the Annie's battlefield, and when the Annie player ride the winds their own unit to the empty battlefield, then you use your hidden blade, for example. So now you wasted the ride the wind for the Annie and killed their unit with your hidden blade. But always remember to play around Vi. So make sure you have a face breaker, hidden blade, or just enough might that the Vi just can't get through your units. So if the Annie finally goes for the Vi ride the wind combo, you just shut her down with the hidden blade or face breaker. Or maybe you have Triferian war camp and you have so much might in the war camp that the Vi can't even get through the battlefield, even if they recycled everything from their trash. This is a very skill-based matchup, but it is favorable to you if you just, but it is a very favorable matchup to you if you just know the Annie's game plan, play around ride the wind, and always have a way to shut down the Vi. So against Annie, I would instantly take out any Grand Stratagem or Imperial Decree. I would also take out Call the Weak and put Facebreaker in. I would put a second Vein in, so you can just keep up with the Annie's tempo, and possibly a Falling Star, taking out either a Kaisa or your Cleave, because Annie's units are still pretty small, so you don't really need Cleave in this matchup. So you could just take Cleave out, Call the Weak out, Imperial Decree or Grand Stratagem out, or even one Kaisa, and then just put in Falling Star, Facebreaker, maybe Shen, maybe Vayne. And then the good old Kaisa. These lists are very random. All of these lists are just something I just picked up very quickly. But yeah, the standard Kaisa list with a large amount of units while also having very cheap spells. So it's very annoying to play into Kaisa. But the good rule of thumb is that if you're attacking into Kaisa, just count her runes and think about what can she do if I attack into her right now. If she has 2 runes up, it could be a Stupefy plus Hextech Ray, or even Smokescreen, or worst case scenario, a double Hextech Ray, and then have a plan B for everything, like maybe you attack into the Kaisa, she uses some spells on your units, then you take out the Darius because Kaisa is now tapped out. This way you can accelerate Darius and attack again, and your Darius leaves because Kaisa is tapped out from using those spells on your other units. So you can make Kaisa kind of waste their runes and spells on your more weak units, and then take out, for example, a Darius and punish Kaisa for going under any threats. And Darius Champion is probably like your best unit into Kaisa because it's just so big. But always remember that Kaisa can play a Watcher, and that's why it's gonna be very tough to hold a battlefield against Kaisa. It is still possible with a Shen or a Hidden Blade in hand, but always remember the threat of Watcher. But Kaisa playing a Watcher does require them having 8 runes runes, so always keep track of their runes, and if they're under 8 runes, then you don't have to worry about Watcher. Then you need to play around Time Warp, because if you go and maybe hold because you're 1 point ahead, they can just go to the other battlefield, conquer it, get a point, then play Time Warp, get another point from holding, and suddenly you lost. So you gotta be very, very careful of Time Warp and try to make them use their runes on their turn. So maybe leave some of your units on the battlefields just to either force them to kill their own units to conquer those battlefields back, or to force them use spells and runes on their turn to conquer the battlefields back. And then when it's finally your turn, you're gonna have an easier time because they're not threatening any crazy stuff anymore. And against Kai'Sa, I would instantly take out Decree Stratagem. I would take out Daring Poro, maybe Call the Weak, and put in a Facebreaker, Shen's, and then when you're gonna pick Arena's Greatest, I would put the second Vayne in. But Facebreaker, Shen's, and Hidden Blades are very good into Watchers, and Shen can just also catch the Kai'Sa off guard. People tend to not play around Shen that much, but yeah, I would only put a second Vayne in the Arena's Greatest game into your main deck. Then Set. I have been asked a ton about how to play against Set. Now you gotta remember, Showstoppers recycle runes, Shen Legend recycle runes, Kiana recycles runes, Set Champion recycles runes, Primal Strength recycles runes, King Kumag recycles runes, etc, etc. So even if Set saves their units, they do have to pay for it. So if you just keep kind of tempoing the Set, maybe play a Call the Weak to force Set use their legend, maybe hold a Hidden Blade, and when Set attacks, you use the Hidden Blade to not only save your own units, but to force the Set to use their legend again. Maybe you have Facebreaker, so when the Set uses Showstopper, they recycle rune, but you have Facebreaker, so you just stun the Set for almost for free, and they once again recycled a rune for the Showstopper, and slowly they're gonna be kind of out of steam if you play it right. The easiest way to punish Set is to probably just play Darius's, and then if you do get to a point where you can for example play a Draven down, or Imperial Decree is also very good into Set, then you can just slowly get a small lead. And this matchup is just a very skill based matchup. If you do play the Darius deck perfectly, you do have a advantage here, just because you have more Hidden Blades, your accelerated Dariuses are so big, you have a Facebreaker, you have a Imperial Decree, and you have Falling Stars. Just remember to play around Call the Glory. If the Set is holding a battlefield and they have a buff, they know what they're doing. They do have the Call the Glory in hand, and they're just trying to bait you into attacking them. So every time you attack, think about their unit, and then think about how much might their unit has, and then add a +3 on top of their might, because you can always assume that their unit is gonna get a +2 or +3 at least. So just remember to play around the Call the Glories and also Showstoppers, and also use your Hidden Blades wisely. First of all, Falling Star is very good into Set. I would run 2 Falling Stars, a Facebreaker, 3 Hidden Blades, Imperial Decree, and possibly take out 1 Seal, 1 Poro, and 1 Kai'Sa. The Imperial Decree isn't probably necessary, so if you do like to have 3 seals, then you can trade the Imperial Decree for the 3rd seal. It's just preference, and it just depends on how well you can manage your runes. But Falling Star, for example, is very, very good into Set. Maybe they save their unit when you attack into them, and finally, when their Set legend is tapped out, you can just use Falling Star into their base and kill their unit off, and it's just very good tempo. And Yi is just a very good matchup for you, but you do have to play around certain things. You have to play around the Dead Bloom, Tasty Feyfolk, Guard, Discipline, and even the First Mate sometimes. The tech to win against Yi is that if you get a point lead and you get to hold, you can just make your one battlefield so big that a Dead Bloom or a White Flame Protector can't get through that battlefield. Yi isn't very good at attacking. I mean, they're good at attacking, but cost like 8 runes. So if you can get more might down on your turn than they can get down on their turn, you just win the game by holding. And especially if you have a Hidden Blade in hand or Imperial Decree in hand, it's gonna be a very, very easy game for you. And your best ally ally against anything green is the falling star. First of all, I would take Kaisa out, I would take a Poro out, I would put Grand Stratagem in actually, and I would put a falling star in, maybe take a cleave out and putting a Shen or Facebreaker in, because the best case scenario is that you get falling star in early game, the enemy finds a Poro, starts to hold a battlefield with the Poro, you just falling star the Poro, conquer both battlefields, and you just defend for the rest of the game. That's why I do like Shen or Facebreaker here, because they just reinforce your holding, and all you want to do is to not let the Yi hold both battlefields, and just don't give the Yi value out of their legend. Try not to attack them, try to kill them with Falling Star or Hidden Blade or Call the Weak, then conquer the empty battlefield, but always remember that they can have the Defy for Hidden Blades, but Falling Star cannot be defied. So Falling Star is your best card in the green. It can't be defied, it does 6 damage, and it can just insta-win you the game in the early game, get you a point lead, and then you can just force the Yi into an awkward position where they have to attack into you, even though Yi usually wants you to attack into them. But just make sure to play around the Defy when you have Hidden Blades. And in general, have a plan B. If things don't work out, what will you do next? Then we have Victor. Victor is weird. You're not playing against any surprise spells necessarily. You're like battling in a war. You send your units to fight for the battlefields, they send their units, etc. You send your units back, etc, etc. But you do not win in the long game against Victor. They have infinite units out of their legend ability, they have a Watcher, they have multiple decrees, they have multiple grand stratagems, and they even have singularities, so their late game is very, very good. There isn't much to talk about, except watch out for the Watcher and the grand stratagem, but there is more to talk about what you want to do against Victor with your own cards. Now, against Victor, I would instantly take out Imperial Decree, I would take out Grand Stratagem, I would take out Call the Weak, I would take out Cleave. Victor units are so small, you don't need Cleave. And you could even take out Falling Star, because there's no reason to Falling Star those 2 might units. Just put in a very, very aggressive deck against Victor. You need to end the game before they get to that point where they can just use Watchers and Grand Stratagems. So put in Vayne, put in 2 Shens, put in a Facebreaker, and just go insanely aggressive. Victor can't really do much against Vayne or accelerated units in general, except Hidden Blade them. They don't have that many combat tricks, but the most important part about Victor is that never let them defend with Grand Stratagem. So let's say you get to 6 points, rather than pulling back all of your units, leave some of your units on the battlefields and pull back the rest. When you leave some of your units in the battlefields, Victor has to either kill his own units to conquer those battlefields back, and that way his Grand Stratagem is gonna be weaker, or the Victor is gonna have to use some spells on their turn, thus making it so they're tapped under Grand Stratagem on your turn. But if you pull all of your units back, the Victor will just conquer both battlefields for free, leave 6 runes up, and you just lose the Grand Stratagem. So either to kill his own units to conquer battlefields back, or force them to use their runes on their turn, and then they can't Grand Stratagem on your turn. Victor versus Darius is like actual strategic battlefield fighting with units, etc. When to go in, when to back off, how many units do you leave at the battlefield, and reading the enemy's hand, is he sitting on a Watcher, Hidden Blade, Grand Stratagem. But just make sure that you end the game before Victor gets too much value out of those bigger end game cards, and suddenly the Victor will just shut you down instantly. And then let's look at some random Ahri deck. Just like with the Yi, Falling Star will insta-win you the matchup. Basically, you can't defy a Falling Star, and especially if you get to Falling Star their blue Ahri, you should be just running the Ahri down at that point. And just like with Yi, try to make the Ahri attack you, force them into that awkward situation where they have to sacrifice stuff and they're not getting much value out of their legend. Just remember that they have charms, they have Watchers, and they have Sprite Mothers, so especially play around the Watcher. But your game plan against Ahri is very similar in your game plan against Yi. I wouldn't put a Grand Stratagem in, I would just keep Imperial Decree, I would take a Poro out, and I would just put a Falling Star in and maybe swap a Kaisa for either a Vayne or a Shen. Just make sure to keep 3 Dariuses in your deck, because Darius is is very, very powerful into anything that wants to defend a battlefield. Just a 7 might acceleration can win you the game themselves. Now, if you have 2 7 might accelerations, it's gonna be very, very tough for the enemy to do anything about that. And then if you pair having a Darius with a falling star, that should just be the game. Don't be afraid to use falling stars early, even if it does recycle 2 runes. Just forcing the enemy to next turn sacrifice a ton to get those battlefields back, or they don't do anything and they just let you hold and you get like 2 points ahead instantly. The early falling star is very powerful, but remember to plan ahead. If you do use the falling star, then what are you gonna lose from it? For example, if you do have a hook in hand, make sure to maybe delay using the falling star for a couple turns so you can actually use your hook. Maybe if you're planning to use a Darius or a Vayne, then wait 1 more turn and then use the falling star on the same turn you use Darius or the Vayne, and suddenly you're doing like 13 damage in 1 turn just from your hand, and that's even more than a Kai'Sa can do. So either play the falling star very aggressively early on, or maybe just wait a little bit and then have this crazy kind of OTK turn where you have so much damage that most decks can't do anything about it, and falling star cannot even be defied. So falling star is just very good into Ahri, Yi, and Set. Let me know what you thought about this very raw video. I just had to make this very quickly because I know many people are going to Houston and maybe they want to hear some of my opinions on the matchups. But I think every matchup is at least 50-50 for you if you're good enough. I would also go as far as saying there isn't actually any matchup that actually counters Darius right now. So if you're piloting the deck perfectly, you're in a very good spot. You could almost win the whole thing. But the deck is very hard to play. It recycles a ton. It has very difficult decisions to go aggro right now or to just wait and go aggro later on. You have to read the opponent's hand very well, and you have to plan ahead your turns to not get punished by all of that recycling you're doing. If you don't plan ahead and you recycle too much, then suddenly you realize, oh, I can't even play Darius anymore. So you have to be very careful, you have to be very precise, but when you pilot the deck well, you're gonna have a very good chance to at least get to the top cut. So thank you for watching and good luck!